Assalamu alaikum everyone, this is Amir Abu Ghudda. I'm going to take you inshallah behind the scenes of my paper on change in Islamic law. And I think it's beneficial first to talk about the motivation behind the paper, just because I think that many people will be able to relate to the reason behind the paper before discussing the substantive contents of the research. Of course, Islamic law is something that intersects most, if not all, aspects of our lives. And naturally, with the modern age, many questions and dilemmas and challenges have arisen. And many young Muslims, especially of our generation, are now asking, about the relevance of Islamic law, its applicability in the modern age, and to what extent can Islamic law change over time with changing circumstances. And this is, of course, a very important question because we are living in a very fast-paced world in terms of the change that is occurring. So this is a very important question that is on the mind of many Muslims. To what extent can Islamic law change and adapt with changing circumstances? And this was sort of the motivation behind the paper. Now, I would hate to spoil the paper for you, but I'll just have to give it to you from the beginning that Islamic law, yes, it can change. There are avenues for change within Islamic law. And there are main points that I go through in the paper. The first point, as a preliminary matter, is to set sort of a framework for this entire discussion, which is that when we talk about change in Islamic law, or when we talk about Islamic law in general, we need to be aware of the fact that as Muslims, we are literally people who submit to God. So as one who is a Muslim, as one who submits to God, one should not have a predetermined conclusion as to what the law should be or what it should not be and how it should look like, right? Because that is the opposite of submitting to God. That is essentially dictating to God what law should or should not be. So this sort of I just said it in the beginning as a preliminary matter to sort of set the stage for the remainder of the paper. And of course, that is not to say that the laws that we find, either in Islamic in the divine text or even in the legal texts of the fuqaha or of the jurists, that's not to say that these laws do not change. They do change. And in the paper, I go through the different legal avenues and the legal tools that Islamic law offers to allow for such change to occur over time. And the research does offer some examples as to cases in which change has occurred. Now, the important thing is to keep in mind, and this is what I emphasize throughout the paper, is that the legal avenues and the legal tools that are available to bring about change in Islamic law, all of this allows for change not despite the Quran and the Sunnah, but rather because of it. In other words, that change in Islamic law is possible because the Quran and the Sunnah has made it possible. The Quran and the Sunnah both of them have offered avenues and legal tools for this change to occur. So we're not compromising on our beliefs. We're not compromising on our fidelity or loyalty to the Quran and the Sunnah, but rather we are applying the Quran and the Sunnah by changing what needs to be changed. This is what God intended us to do, right? So this is an application of the law, not a violation of it. Now, of course, this is not to say that this is a green light for every single law. There are, and the paper goes through the different types of laws, those that are able to change and those that are not subject to change. And all of these details are present in the paper. But at the end of the day, the whole point of this is to at least offer a sober second thought, right? Because we enter these discussions and these debates sometimes with an extreme emotion on one end or the other. For example, some people will have this strong, desire to remain loyal to the Quran and the Sunnah, and they just, and that will drive them to sometimes take a position that just is not substantiated by the Quran and the Sunnah. And some people will go the other way, and their emotion will drive them to just, open the door to change on everything, to the extent where now the the door is open to author a new religion, right? Because now you can change every law because everything is relative. So this paper, the purpose of it to a great extent was to offer a sober second thought to see how change in Islamic law looks like, why it is possible, how it is possible, and how the jurists over time until today try and balance these two considerations: fidelity to the Quran and the Sunnah, to the text, to the sources of Islamic law, loyalty to these laws, because at the end of the day, as Muslims, we submit to whatever God tells us to do. So that's one consideration. The second consideration is, well, as human beings who are going through a time that is filled with an enormous and unprecedented amount of change, the law needs to remain relevant and applicable and needs to accommodate for these new realities. So there needs to be a way to balance these two considerations, and this is something that the paper has, I tried to shed light on this to the extent possible throughout the paper. So I hope, based on this brief explanation, that you will go and maybe read the paper and look at it in detail. And I hope, if I didn't do a good job of explaining the paper or motivating you to read the paper, that you don't judge the paper on that basis, and that you give it a chance and go ahead and give it a read, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum.